Thanks, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about what we're doing here in Western Australia. I am the Program Director for Spatial WA, which is a whole of government program, which we're sort of at the starting gates for. I say we're at the starting gates for, it's been 4 years to get to the starting gate. So what I want to do today is share a bit of that journey of where we've come from and, more importantly, focus on where we're going. To begin with, though, I'd like to start with a bit of acknowledgement of country. So I myself am sitting on the lands of the Whadjuk Noongar people. And what we're talking about today is talking about digital twins, but fundamentally it's all about land and how we understand the history of the land, how we manage that land for today, and ensure that we provide a framework in which future generations can manage land. Whether that we're talking about below, on, or above the ground. So with that in mind, I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and to all emerging leaders. I extend my thanks, and hopefully we'll be able to build something together. So I just want to start with a bit of where we've come from. So Spatial WA started as an idea. We know that digital twin technologies are quite prevalent globally, but for Landgate, we are the land administration agency of the state, and our ethos is about powering the state with where, with the knowledge of where, so that we have a thriving economy. So we started to explore this in 2019 in a little bit more detail. What do we mean by when we say the value of where? What is the issues that are currently the state was facing at that point in time, and where could improved access to digital data through the use of a technology platform benefit the state? So this investigation started, we validated with over 30 agencies, we held over 100 different consultations to understand what were the real challenges of government and how could digital data support that. So as we did that, we noted that pressure was increasing, organisations needed the right data at the right time, and while we've been lucky here in Western Australia, we've had really good data sharing agreements. We've had a data sharing platform called SLIP since the mid-2000s. There was a lot of collaboration that was happening across agencies. There were still some prevailing challenges across governments that restricted how information could be shared, or there was legacy systems, or it was just lack of opportunity, lack of understanding. So this is sort of where Spatial WA was formed, to solve these challenges. And we took the notion of that we know we needed to use digital technologies. We knew that digital twins provided a great tool, not only just to provide a common platform about seeing the built-in natural environment, but then using information to connect to the richness of information about the built-in natural environment. So this is where the program was established. So the 6 challenges. So this is what we really focus on with our partner agencies. We really highlighted that while we had SLIP in place, once again, since the mid-2000s, really well established, great data sharing agreements, there was still a lack of comprehensive data being shared. And that was either due to complete unawareness, or simply that there was some restrictions in terms of the data, and agencies that wanted the richness weren't getting the richness of that information. We also found that agencies needed to really modify the data. If they could discover it and if they could access it, they still needed to modify that data before it became fit for use. We also knew that data was being shared quite manually. A lot of electronic PDFs, which is not electronic data or digital data, was still being shared around via email. And so there's a really lot of siloed planning approval processes that were still happening across government. With the advent of technologies and sensors and getting a real feel of what is happening at any point in time, there was just simply missed opportunities with regards to 4D data over time and smart city technologies. Cost of change. While we all talk about the wonderful new technologies, the reality is a lot of organisations are still sitting on legacy systems that have been in place for many, many years. They support their operational need, but it doesn't support a collaborative need. And what we were seeing is just simple duplication. Data platforms being set up all over the place. Spatial was being invested into, but being invested into in a point solution and not really looking at the big picture of how organizations can collaborate on projects together and how do we minimize the duplication, both in the system investment, but also in the data investment as well. So these were some of the challenges that really formed the basis about how could Spatial WA and our program solve these challenges. And if we were to solve these challenges, how would we measure those benefits? So what we're building here in Western Australia is what we're calling an advanced spatial digital twin. And the advanced part really comes to looking at how the usability of the technology is going to be utilised across government. And what we're also focusing on is that we're not just looking at the digital twin technology, we're really focusing at the root level on the data, what has to happen to the data. We're then looking at the cadastre framework and how do we move cadastre from a 2D plane to the 3D, 4D plane, because the Earth is lumpy and bumpy, and yet we're very accustomed to looking at 2D maps. And I think Sean highlighted it in his talk about Wellington, is Wellington's quite lumpy and bumpy as well, and it moves quite a bit. But that happens all over the world. But we always seem to project our data to a 2D realm. And to really highlight the benefits of a digital twin, a 3D visualization tool, and the richness of information, we needed to ensure that our cadastral framework could be represented in 3D so information could be placed in the correct location at the correct time. So with that, the two platforms that we're focusing on, the first one is called the Next Generation Spatial Cadastre. So WA, I feel, has been quite lucky. We've got a quite mature cadastre framework. It's been spatially upgraded numerous times. But what we really want to do is start prepping how our cadastre system supports 3D supplier of survey information. So I know that there's a bit of work happening in Australia about a 3D CSDM format for survey plan lodgement, and we want to ensure that we can harness the digital data coming out of that survey plan lodgement process and start building a 3D cadastre. But importantly, one of the things that we validated was that numerous agencies are managing their own administrative boundaries. Those administrative boundaries align to the cadastre. So as the cadastre changes, a lot of the agencies are investing in time and resources to align their administrative boundaries to the changed cadastre, whether the cadastral parcel has been subdivided, amalgamated, whatever that change might be, or the simple movement. A lot of time and effort is being spent to adjust other administrative boundaries. So we looked at that problem and said, okay, if we're going to be updating the cadastre and we're going to have a 3D, 4D framework for the cadastre, how do we enable other agencies to also manage their administrative boundaries? And those administrative boundaries might be simple as development zones, suburbs, locality boundaries, but other things like mining tenements, petroleum tenements, environmental, road reserves, other things like that. How do these agencies align their boundaries within our platform? So as the cadastre moves, we can use technology to ensure that the administrative boundaries are kept in sync and aligned and move. And what we hope to achieve with that is then when government needs to identify land, or in the future where the private sector wants to identify land in which to invest, build new infrastructure, whatever it might be, we've got a platform that brings all the right information together to give some level of certainty that your rights, restrictions, and responsibilities in relation to that land parcel are known, and there aren't any hidden elements to that in terms of you not being able to clear a portion of the land parcel, or if there's contaminated sites, or if there's a flood risk, whatever that information might be, it's all there and accessible. So the Next Generation Spatial Cadastre is the first platform that we're seeking to put in place with our digital twin journey here. The second, of course, is the Spatial Digital Twin. And I think we've taken a bit of a long shot with the approach here in Western Australia. I think Sean mentioned once again from the talk in New Zealand this morning that people don't trust what you can't see. And so we've taken the viewpoint that digital twins are prevalent. The technology is known. There's many types of technology that are out there globally. we're not going to go down a proof of concept process here. We've got great agreements from agencies already in terms of data sharing. We know we've got a platform for data discovery and access that's been in place for the mid-2000s. What we're really seeking is the next evolution of that. So what we took was a concerted approach to not do a proof of concept to demonstrate this new technology to government, but to leverage what was happening out there globally and focus on the use case and the benefits that would be delivered if we brought this technology into the state of Western Australia and if we applied it to the wealth of data that we already have here. So what we're hoping to do from our digital twin platform is look at the outcomes that we expect from the use case and ensure that we've got a technology alignment that gives us those outcomes. So ultimately, it will still serve as a central hub to access the wealth of information across Western Australia. But importantly, we want to be able to have what we call the advanced capabilities to provide what we're calling collaboration spaces. That is, I am looking at a new infrastructure project, or I need to work together with another agency. I want to spin up a space with all the capability, but have it secure so I can start sharing sensitive data within that space, know that it will only be shared with authorized users that can access it, and that's going to serve my project need, whatever that need might be. We also want the advanced capabilities to run analytics to generate scenarios. So not that I can just discover, access and visualize data, but the real outcomes that a lot of our agencies want is to be able to query the data. It's got to provide decision support outcomes. Not that I can use it and visualize it and interpret it to support my decision. I want the tool to help me make those decisions. So, and importantly, the additional capabilities we're after is workflow capability. So where we talked about siloed planning approvals processes, how do we streamline the inefficiencies of data sharing and approval processes where we're sending PDFs around, we're trying to get agencies to provide their input into a process? How do we use a common platform with the same information, the same picture, and allow the right organizations to participate in a workflow that we all can look at the same information at the same time and have certainty, whatever those decisions might be. So that's sort of what we're aiming to have with our digital twin program. And the Advanced Digital Twin really is a combination of the next-gen cadastre and the Spatial Digital Twin platform coming together to provide certainty around the digital data that is held with government for use within government to begin with. Importantly, and I think this has been highlighted, and I noted that Marie highlighted that in the previous presentation, that data is the challenge, and that data is the challenge once again here in Western Australia. What we're doing with our program is that we've got to, we're investing in people. Yes, we've got to purchase the technology. Yes, we've got to configure that technology. But as part of our program, we're investing in people. And those people aren't just going to be held within Landgate, who is running the program, which is where my team is located, but we are investing in agencies that are participating so that they can recruit a data analyst, a business lead, somebody that can work within their own agencies and work across the agencies to uplift the data that's required for the spatial digital twin. And what we're taking is we're taking a leaf out of the digital engineering and built construction industry and looking at a life cycle approach to our data. That is, how do we identify what information is required? How do we prepare and procure that information? How do we have standards so that when we're procuring data, that information, that cost is noted, so that when that supply of information goes into the digital twin, we can then start measuring its benefit, its ongoing use. One of the biggest challenges that we find is that agencies procure and capture data all the time. That's just behavior. What we also know is that to put a dollar cost to how much is being invested into is very, very difficult. It's not captured financially. So when we talk about that data is an asset, from a financial ledger perspective, it is not an asset. We want to explore how our data management framework can start uplifting the understanding that as we move technology to be more of a platform as a service, it is not a capital asset. We can't use capital funds to fund that technology. we do still own the data. That is government's IP. And so how do we start truly treating that as an asset? And so we've taken our life cycle approach to really go back to the root and look at the procurement process for data capture and start, how do we capture the dollar value at that point in time? How do we use consistency in standards and processes so that information, once it's captured, there's a common location for that information to be stored so it can be discovered and accessed appropriately. And importantly, use the data management framework to have the minimum metadata in place at that point throughout the life cycle so someone can understand how it was captured and its fitness for purpose. And then we utilize the platforms itself to then start using that data to support decision outcomes. So this is actually where I think the biggest investment for Spatial WA will be, and this is where the largest amount of time will be spent is in this data management framework. This is a bit of a view in terms of what we're seeking with our Advanced Spatial Digital Twin. We want to set this up as an ecosystem for government, meaning that we already know that a lot of agencies have invested in technology. We don't want to be duplicating that investment. We don't even want to be duplicating their publishing of that data. If they've already got published endpoints, we want to harvest that. But where agencies don't have that capability, we want to provide that ecosystem capability across government for agencies to put their data into the Advanced Spatial Digital Twin and importantly make that information available. So in this diagram here, you can see the box with the red outline. That's the next gen spatial cadastre. That's going to be a closed system, meaning that only government agencies that have the custodial control to administer boundary information will be sharing and managing that information within the cadastre. Where people need that boundary information, that'll be published into the Spatial Digital Twin platform and made available. So there's sort of a bit of a master plan of what we're seeking here. Importantly, we do have SLIP still operating while we're developing our program. That will be decommissioned in the future. It is a legacy system and it served its purpose, but now with what we're doing with Spatial WA, we don't want to have duplicated systems out there. So we will decommission SLIP into the future. So the use cases. So this is really where the rubber hits the road for us. So we've got 4 defined use cases as part of our program. These use cases have undertaken Treasury analysis to look at the cost, time, impact of how these use cases currently operate across government and where the benefits might be from a Spatial Digital Twin perspective and what we're doing with Spatial WA. So the first one is around infrastructure and projects. I think it's been noted in a couple of talks this morning about infrastructure typically has quite a lot of cost blowouts. There's a lot of uncertainty in the planning design stage, where the underground assets might be, what the impact to the community might be, what the supply of materials are, etc. So what we want to do is to ensure that the Spatial WA platform supports infrastructure projects by providing the right information and the insights that are required at each stage of an infrastructure lifecycle. That is the planning, the design, the build, the handover, the maintenance, the operations, and the renewal of that infrastructure. So how do we actually enable a digital asset of that infrastructure, which happens now? We as government are already investing and purchasing a digital build model of infrastructure for every project. It's part of most projects build contract that the vendor or the build contractor is building a digital model for the infrastructure. But what we lack in government is the capacity and capability to manage that digital data. So we want to look at how the platform can support that, but importantly, once again, the investment into people, how do we sustain that data so it doesn't become outdated? And then importantly, once we understand the infrastructure project, how do we support precinct planning? How do we maximize the land use around the infrastructure? So it's not just about the delivery of the infrastructure, it's about the delivery of land use and community amenity and precinct development, new housing stock, whatever it might be, surrounding the infrastructure project. So how do we use the digital twin in that space? So this project is being led by one of our partner agencies, and we have a lot of other support agencies that have already signed up to willing to provide data into this platform, into this program as we kick it off. The second is around digital approval workflows. So that, once again, I think I've already talked about. There's a lot of siloed planning approval processes that happen around the land development application space. How do we provide a common platform for that digital information that is supplied by the industry to government? How do we leverage that digital information to provide a common platform for the approvals process? So that is our objectives around this use case, is to make sure that we provide that collaboration environment, that everyone can see the same information as part of this process. But importantly, into the future, how do we then align this process with BIM information? And I'll talk about the need for one of the challenges that we'll have within this program, which is to create a new foundational data set, a buildings data set. But importantly, we want to link to BIM as part of this process, so that as a development application submits a BIM model, a building information model data set as part of the DA process, how do we harvest that information and make sure that we've got a richer data set to provide the building feature outline, but importantly, we've got the connections to the asset data, the real information that people want to know about our built environment, not just the feature outline of the buildings. The third use case is what we're calling exposure modelling. So the biggest issue we have here, and this will be led by Department of Fire and Emergency Services here in Western Australia, is that when a natural hazard occurs, you can get access to the data. There's provisions in place here in Western Australia that when an emergency is called, agencies must supply their data for the coordinated efforts around responding to the emergency and the recovery efforts that are required there. But where we have the gap is around the planning and preventiveness activities prior to a natural hazard. How do we provide information so that we can look at any location and look at what's at risk, the people, the demographic layout of the site, the environmental considerations, the asset considerations. How do we know where we send our limited resources? What do we need to protect? What are we comfortable with letting go? Can we let that building be destroyed through a flood and protect this one over here? Where is all that planning happening? And at the moment, it's very difficult for agencies to plan at that level because a lot of the information can't be accessed due to restrictions in place. So we want to look at exposure modelling capability, which is an analytical capability to tell us the risk that might occur at any location, and ultimately support regional towns to be more resilient. How do they secure the right funding for the right thing, whether it's a levy bank or a new fire station or whatever it might be, to ensure that if in the event of a natural hazard, they've got the best chance of protecting lives, assets and property. And the fourth use case really relates back to the next-gen spatial cadastre. This is how do we ensure that the next-gen supports the navigation of complex regulations around land boundaries, so that it provides better certainty for you looking at a land parcel going, I know what my rights, restrictions, responsibilities are in relation to that. And really this is all about proving a 4D cadastre, having the platform in place to support 3D survey plan lodgement into the future, and then using this coordinated admin boundary management tool to provide better certainty when we want to find land parcels. So they're the four use cases that we're progressing with regards to Spatial WA. So to me, I don't really care what the technology is that we move forward with, whether it's an open source environment, a proprietary environment, or a mix of all that. For me, my success criteria will be the delivery of these use cases and the demonstrated benefits of these use cases using digital data, using the technology, and ensuring that we change the behaviours and the culture across our stakeholder organisations to really harness the value of a digital twin system. So just by a summary, so the Advanced Spatial Digital Twin will be the combination of these two platforms underpinned by a data management framework. And it's really that data management framework where we're going to be spending a lot of time and effort. Our outcome really is to provide confidence to government that they know that when they access Spatial WA, they're accessing the latest data, and we change those behaviours where people, when they're accessing data through an online system, whether they call up the agency, go and secure more information, we want to change that so they know that when they're accessing it, they're accessing the latest data and they've got the tools to assist them in the decision support process. This will come with challenges. I mentioned before we want to integrate with BIM information coming through, but we know that we also need to provide a new foundational 3D buildings data set for the state of Western Australia. It's not captured at the moment. I know other digital twin journeys have already done this or starting this process. We need to do this in Western Australia as well. Importantly, this does provide the visual element so people understand the 3D built and natural environment in which they're working within. But importantly, once we've got the buildings data set, it's connecting that information to the richness of the data itself. So we know that not only that's the building, we know what type of building it might be, what it's built for, what it was built from, its layout, and the same with other types of assets that happen out there, vegetation, environment, etc. We've got a program of 5 years to implement Spatial WA. So some of the challenges will be other priorities of other agencies. Things will pop up that take focus away from what we're doing. So how do we maintain that focus within that program moving forward and ensure that we've got alignment with other projects? So we've worked very closely with our Treasury department here in Western Australia to ensure that when other agencies are seeking a data platform or seeking to invest in technology, we have a test in place to say, does this sound like the capability that we're building in Spatial WA? Could this capability that we've got be leveraged to support this other agency's need? And we build those connections moving forward. The other challenge is around skilled resources. How do we get the right people to work on the program? For those that know Western Australia, we're a mining state and mining pays a lot more than what government pays. And so getting skilled resources to focus on this project to really make this transformative change across government is going to be a challenge. And the fourth challenge here that I see is fatigue. We've got a 5-year program that will be dealing with up to 30 agencies ongoingly. There will be fatigue coming into this program. So how do we manage fatigue moving forward? So I don't have the answers to these. These are just things that we've highlighted within our program that we know will be faced moving forward. But as I said, we've got a bit of a 5-year roadmap to deliver this program. Really what we're seeking is to have the technology in place within the next 2 to 3 years. And the 5 years really is about the measurement of the benefits that we're hoping to get out of those use cases. So here you can see just a bit of a timeline of what we're working towards at the moment. As I said at the start, we're sort of starting gate. We are about to enter a procurement phase where we want to seek the technology to provide the platforms that we're moving forward. We've done a lot of work around the use cases because that's the narrative that we want to make sure is out and front and center. The delivery of the technology just supports the outcomes that we're seeking, but it's the outcomes of the use cases that are going to drive the ongoing investment into this program. Our program is focused in that area. And so I just want to finalise by saying thank you. I'm not sure if there's questions or not, but if you are interested in a little bit more about Spatial WA, I've put a link on the page there. You can just Google it. We do have a site now set up. It's been hidden away for some time now, but as we're moving forward, we're bringing down the curtains around this program and hope to drive some engagement around it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Darren. I'm really excited to see all the thinking that's got you to this point. I had a chat with you a few years back when you were kicking off in this role, so I really congratulate you. I can see there's been a mountain of work. You've left yourself, I think, very cleverly 1.5 minutes for questions. So I'm going to, Lewis, thank you for asking a question. I'm going to just jump in with it so that we can save time. He's mentioned Main Roads WA, and I think the question really is about collaboration with other parts of government and also extracting different value out of data for the digital twin. What are you doing in that space?
Probably quite a lot at this point in time. So Main Roads, I would say it's one of the more mature agencies here in Western Australia. They've got an open data framework that's been set up for some time, and they've got really well established standards for their data. So what we're finding is that other agencies are wanting to leverage what Main Roads have done here, but ensure that they can also access the data coming out of Main Roads to support their needs. So we are working with Main Roads about how do we connect into their data. And this is going to be some of the other challenges from a technology area to say, okay, if they've already published an endpoint to their data and somebody wants to run some sort of analytics combining their information, how do we ensure the platform responds in an appropriate time frame? Do we need to cache some of that data coming out of Main Roads and their endpoints into the platform to speed up that process? So it's really about that usability aspect that we're focusing on, the user design principles around how people want to connect to information, but importantly then use it. So throughout 2023, we ran quite a number of technical working groups with up to about 30 agencies, all participating, building out the requirements for what they want to see within this platform. And that they will be some of the challenges moving forward. And that's why I say fatigue is also a challenge when you're running all these workshops. But suffice to say, we've got great engagement there.